What we will now do is move to a more open format. So if you'd like to either ask a question to anyone who's come before, or just generally to the floor, or to give a short speech adding to the all the viewpoints being put forward already. Oh my. All right then. I'll kick us off with Nuo, since you've not spoken at this debate yet. Whenever you're ready, short speech.
All right. So the issue I had with the split between the immoral the people arguing for the moral side and not immoral side is that both the people who were arguing for the not immoral side only really touched on polygamous relationships rather than the people who were talking about that having multiple partners is immoral touched on multiple different types of relationships outside of polygamy that were having multiple there might be multiple partners. And the what comes up from this is that the polygamous relationships where all the people in the relationship agree and are truthful with that they are in a polygamous relationship with multiple partners, then there isn't that immorality that someone might be seeing other partners without one of their partners knowing about that. Meanwhile, in something like an open relationship where there is a couple, but each person in that couple might be seeing other partners not as committal to that couple, but outside of that relationship and aren't as truthful with their partners that they have other partners. That brings up immoral issues. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Right. There are a bunch of people who want to give short speeches. So who to choose next? Who hasn't spoken at the debate yet? Ori, you're up first.
Okay. I don't. I know I'm supposed to keep this short because I've had a lot of thoughts throughout the whole thing, but this subject has actually been something that I've personally been I don't want to say experienced in because the subject of this has affected me personally throughout my life, so I have a lot of opinions about it. But I'm mostly a lot of the arguments that I've heard, I don't really understand why they were necessary to have. Because one side, like every time someone who believed it to be immoral would use the argument of the STD argument, and that the other side would say, oh well, or other kinds of arguments, but the other side would say, oh well, that happens in normal relationships. And while that is true, in a polyamorous relationship, that only increases the amount of damage that can be done. So I'm
going to cut you there. That's a minute.
Okay.
Well, that should be evidence of to everyone else who wants to give a short speech that you must be concise. So think now, whilst you're waiting, about what you want to say. Maybe even write down in a notepad the key points you want to communicate, and do so swiftly. So, right, moving on to our next person. Crawford, 1 minute.
Thank you. In my opinion, morality is subjective. If all of the partners agree and consent to multiple partners, the arrangement is moral by the group's definition. If you are arguing that morality is absolute, then that sounds like a freedom of religion argument. I agree that passing diseases to others is immoral by my own moral code because it most likely involves the recipient not consenting to receiving the disease. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to St. Hugo.
I feel like a lot of people get their emotions confused on the immoral and moral stance because it isn't necessarily something that I mean, it's obviously a very diverse topic, but for me personally, I was for this being immoral. I thought this was immoral, but after hearing some thoughts and debates and working throughout this in my own head, I began to realize that this is more of a jealousy thing for me. That this thing isn't, that polyamory as a whole isn't necessarily immoral. I believe that people have the ability and freedom to do whatever they want and choose in a relationship, but I think that this isn't for me, if that makes sense. And that's it. That's it. I just wanted to that's it.
Thank you. All right then. Next up, Woolric. You say your internet's fine now. Give it a go.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So personally, I am against polygamy, mainly because not the impact it has on the people themselves, but mainly on what the impacts around them is. So I'm mainly concerned about the children, if that makes sense, because children really need to look up to people, and I don't think that having multiple dads, for example, I grew up with multiple dads, isn't a very good thing, because you get the one dad, the one father role, where you know fish hunting with rifles and being, then being on the other side more like a less manlier person, for example, just sitting in the basement building little planes. And I think that can be weird for children and build up weird understandings of the world.
Thank you, Woolric. So thank you for all those short contributions. I really like this idea, actually, of having shorter contributions towards the end. That's the end of the kind of structured debate that we have. We'll now take a final vote. Mizuno, whenever you're ready to post that. You can no longer abstain. Let's see. Yes. If you vote for both, you get named and shamed.
In the meantime, can I sort of add something to what Walric said?
Very briefly, yes.
So he said that basically it's someone who grows in a house with two dads may have the conflicting ideas of manhood, or however he put it. I think that is sort of even better that if you have two dads with slightly different attitude to life and different characteristics, then it helps you realize that you can be whatever you want.
Thank you. So, this house concludes, therefore, that having multiple partners is not immoral. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.